My name is Emma, and for most of my teenage years, everyone in my house treated me like the academically hopeless one. I grew up in a family where my older sister Jessica was the golden child, the girl who supposedly inherited all the brains, the discipline, the talent, and, according to my dad, the only real shot this family has at a respectable degree. He repeated that so many times that the words lodged themselves into the corners of my mind, like stains I couldn't scrub out. Meanwhile, I was the one handed stacks of old community college brochures, as if that was all I would ever be allowed to dream of. My dad had a habit of making his insults sound like advice. "Emma, honey, be realistic," he said one night during dinner while Jessica showed off her latest academic award. "Not everyone is made for college. Some people thrive with trades." I remember poking my fork into mashed potatoes, trying to pretend the sting didn't reach my chest. Jessica smirked gently, not cruelly, but with the confidence of someone who'd never had to question her worth. My mom nodded along, adding, "Your father just wants what's best for you." What they didn't know was that I had been studying in secret every night. While they thought I was watching makeup tutorials, I was reviewing Khan Academy SAT modules, bookmarking MIT OpenCourseWare lectures, and highlighting chapters of used AP textbooks I bought with babysitting money. The second major insult came at a family gathering where Aunt Margaret loudly announced, "At least Jessica got a full ride to state. Emma will be just fine in community college." My uncle laughed and added, "She might even meet someone there and settle down early. Nothing wrong with finding a husband instead of drowning in debt." I swallowed hard, pretending the punch I sipped wasn't burning my throat. Inside my tote bag, pressed between notebooks, was a printed SAT score report with a shiny 1580 on it, numbers they would have sworn I could never achieve. I ran my fingers over the folded edges, wondering how long I could keep hiding something so big. The third insult came from my dad again, the one that hurt the most. He stood in the garage beside stacks of old college boxes from Jessica's room. He didn't even glance at me when he said, "You're not college material, Emma. Focus on something practical." He said it like a conclusion, not an opinion. His voice was final, a verdict delivered with confidence. I stood there silently, the cold concrete pressing into my feet. He had no idea that tucked behind the laundry detergent on a high shelf, I had hidden a thin envelope from Stanford, an early outreach letter inviting me to join a prospective student program. But what my family didn't know was that I'd already been receiving mysterious emails from prestigious universities. Stanford had emailed me twice. MIT sent a message about their Women in STEM summer program. Yale's admissions portal notified me that my application was marked complete earlier than expected. I kept everything hidden by saving attachments in a locked folder on my laptop under a random name like Chemistry Notes Unit 7, and nobody ever questioned it. I even printed a scholarship eligibility letter from Northwestern and tucked it inside my AP Calculus notebook. Every time I flipped through the pages, the letter peeked out like a small secret hug, reminding me I wasn't imagining my capabilities. Late at night, when the house was quiet, I'd sit at my desk with a single lamp on, the soft light pooling over my textbooks and practice tests. I often cried quietly, not from sadness, but from the pressure of having no one who believed in me. I remember holding a Princeton brochure one night, my hands trembling as I traced the picture of Nassau Hall. I whispered, "Maybe I really can do this." It felt ridiculous to say aloud, but it also felt like oxygen. When I was overwhelmed, I played recordings of campus tours from Yale or Johns Hopkins, listening to the footsteps echo across stone paths. In those late hours, I felt like I was already walking there myself. One night, I opened my laptop and saw an email that made my breath stop. It was from a scholarship committee. We are pleased to inform you that you have advanced to the semi-finalist stage for the $180,000 Independent Scholars Merit Award. My heart hammered against my ribs. I covered my mouth to keep quiet because my dad was in the hallway telling Jessica how proud he was of her state university acceptance. I whispered to myself, if only you knew. I wanted to shout the news, but instead I printed the email, folded it into a tiny square, and slipped it under my pillow like a lucky charm. Meanwhile, the FAFSA deadline approached, and I needed my dad's information. I timidly approached him in the living room, clutching my laptop. Dad, can you help me sign the FAFSA forms? I need your financial information. He didn't even look up from his phone. No, he said flatly, I'm not signing anything for a college you won't survive. I'm not enabling you to throw money away. My throat tightened. But it's free to apply, I whispered. He waved his hand dismissively. I said no. I stood frozen, absorbing the finality of his refusal. That was the night I realized I was entirely on my own. But the email I received that night would change everything. I didn't sleep the night my dad refused to sign the FAFSA forms. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling, my laptop open beside me, the FAFSA tab still glowing like a reminder of everything I was denied. Around 2 a.m, an email notification lit up the screen. My pulse jumped when I saw the sender. Princeton University Office of Undergraduate Admissions. I clicked it with trembling fingers. Congratulations, the email began. My heart stopped. Your application has progressed to the final review stage, and we would like to schedule an interview with you. I covered my face with both hands, tears pooling at the corners of my eyes. The timing felt surreal, almost cinematic, as if the universe was whispering, "You're not done yet." The next morning at breakfast, Jessica chatted happily about choosing dorm decor for State University. My parents nodded along, offering suggestions and praising her ambition. I sat silently, nursing a cup of tea, trying to hide how exhausted I felt. My mom glanced at me briefly and said, "Emma, honey, have you looked at that dental assistant program Margaret mentioned? It could be a good fit." My dad didn't even look up when he added, "Something stable, something realistic." I stared at the steam rising from my mug, imagining for a moment telling them about Princeton. Instead, I repeated quietly, "I'm figuring it out." Jessica shot me a sympathetic smile, the kind people give a lost child. I slipped my phone under the table, rereading the Princeton email like a secret flame warming my hands. Later that afternoon, I sat in the backyard with a stack of college brochures I pretended were from community colleges. Inside one brochure, hidden like a forbidden photograph, was a letter from MIT inviting me to their Women in STEM weekend, travel fully funded. I traced the embossed logo with my thumb, feeling both proud and terrified. My cousin Amanda arrived unexpectedly, dropping by with a bag of snacks. When she saw the brochures, she laughed gently. "Emma, you don't even seem excited. Are you really just applying to these?" I hesitated. Amanda had always been kinder to me than the others. Finally, in a low voice, I whispered, "I applied to Princeton. MIT too." Her eyes widened. "Wait, seriously?" I nodded. She grabbed my hands. "Emma, that's huge. Why haven't you told anyone?" I shook my head. They wouldn't believe me. Amanda squeezed my hands again and whispered, "Then let them find out later." What my family didn't know was that while they pushed me toward backup plans, I was attending virtual information sessions for Yale, Northwestern, Johns Hopkins, and Stanford. I filled notebooks with detailed notes about financial aid packages, research opportunities, and honors programs. I watched admitted student panels late into the night, imagining what it would feel like to be accepted. My favorite moment was listening to a Stanford professor describe the Women in Engineering mentorship program. "We support students who were underestimated," she said. The word underestimated hit me like a soft punch. I whispered it to myself again and again. It felt like someone had finally named what I was carrying. Around this time, scholarship committees began reaching out. One committee requested a follow-up interview. Another sent a letter saying I was eligible for a $95,000 renewable grant if I enrolled in a partner university. I printed every letter and kept them in a thin binder under my bed. Sometimes I'd take it out, flip through the pages, and imagine placing it on the kitchen table one day. My favorite document was the semi-finalist letter for the $180,000 Independent Scholars Merit Award, the one I had hidden under my pillow. Each time I read it, I felt something inside me knit itself back together. The pressure grew heavier at the family's so-called college decision dinner, a tradition meant to celebrate Jessica's final choice. My dad grilled steaks while relatives filled the living room. The house buzzed with excitement. Aunt Margaret arrived carrying a cake that read, "Proud of our future doctor." She hugged Jessica, gushing about how bright her future was. Then she turned to me with a polite smile and said, "Emma, did you ever decide which community college you're applying to?" My cheeks warmed. I forced a smile and answered, "I'm still considering my options." My uncle chuckled. "As long as it's affordable, no sense wasting loans on a gamble." Laughter echoed around the room. Inside my pocket, my phone buzzed with a notification. I checked it discreetly. An email preview appeared. "Congratulations on your acceptance." I felt my pulse in my throat, but I stayed silent. As dinner went on, the conversation shifted to Jessica's financial aid. She explained her package proudly, mentioning grants and loans. My father puffed his chest and said, "This is why we put all our resources into her. She's the one who can handle college." I pushed my fork through my salad, trying not to react. Then I heard him say, "Honestly, it's a blessing Emma isn't aiming too high. We couldn't handle 2 college tuitions." The room chuckled softly. I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted metal. My phone buzzed again. My stomach tightened with anticipation. I waited for a moment when no one was looking, then checked it under the table. It was from Yale. The preview read, "We are thrilled to inform you." My hands shook. I locked my phone quickly, afraid my expression would give me away. After dinner, I stepped out onto the porch to breathe. The cold air stung my face, grounding me. My phone buzzed again, another message. This time, it was from Stanford's admissions counselor. "Emma, please check your portal when you have a moment. Congratulations." My breath fogged the air. I leaned against the porch railing, letting tears slip down. Not sad tears, relief tears. Everything I'd worked for was beginning to unfold, piece by piece, email by email, acceptance by acceptance. But I couldn't tell anyone. Not yet. Not with the FAFSA barrier looming like a locked gate. Amanda found me outside and asked, "Are you okay?" I nodded, wiping my face. "I got into Yale and maybe Stanford." She gasped softly, covering her mouth. "Emma, that's incredible." I hugged myself, gripping my elbows to steady my breathing. "My dad won't sign my FAFSA. I don't know how I'm going to pay for anything." Amanda thought for a moment before saying, "There are ways to become independent for financial aid. It's hard, but possible." I stared at her. "Independent? Like, legally?" She nodded. "Yes, if your situation qualifies." A spark of hope flickered in my chest. That night I researched until sunrise, and that search changed everything. I turned to my mother, hoping to find a little support in her eyes, maybe even a little pride. I would have accepted anything. A smile, a gesture, a sign that she finally realized I was building something great. But instead, I saw her face harden. She seemed tense, almost nervous, as if the success I had just revealed threatened the entire balance she had always wanted to maintain in the house, a balance where my brother shone and I remained in the shadows. "That's good," she said finally, in a mechanical tone, as if she were congratulating a distant neighbor. Nothing more. No enthusiasm. Not a single spark. I felt something inside me break. All those years of silence, of enduring, of smiling despite everything, only to hear that soulless "that's good"? My dad didn't even look up from his phone. I heard him mutter something like, "All the better if it can save us some money." Was that it for them? My victory? A potential saving? If only they knew? I didn't want to spoil the moment. Not yet. I knew a much greater truth was yet to come. A truth that would shatter everything they believed, everything they thought was normal. A truth that would finally force them to see me differently. So I sat back down, caught my breath, and let the conversation continue. But around me, I could feel the looks changing. My aunt, for example, kept staring at me as if she couldn't believe that I, the quiet girl, had won a scholarship to Harvard. My cousins asked me 1,000 questions, and the more excited they became, the more my parents withdrew. My brother obviously couldn't bear being overshadowed. He cleared his throat with exaggerated slowness, as if he were about to announce the arrival of the president himself. "Well, that's all cool," he said, "but I have to finalize my student loans tomorrow. And frankly, it's my dream school, so it's worth it." He glanced at my father, looking for a reaction, a compliment, a little validation. And I already knew what my parents had done. I hadn't yet revealed that part of the story, but I knew that my brother had gotten exactly what he wanted: unlimited financial relief. They had already signed up for almost $200,000 in loans, just so he could shine. And I was supposed to be impressed? I remained silent, for the moment. Meanwhile, the party continued. The guests laughed, ate, and took pictures. They talked about university projects, moving house, and travel. Everything seemed normal, but not to me. The more I heard talk of the future, the more I felt that mine was too big, too vast, too unexpected to keep locked away any longer. I deserved to exist as much as anyone else in this house. Then, when the music subsided and everyone gathered around the cake, I felt the moment approaching. A moment when all appearances would shatter. The aunt who was hosting the evening then spoke. "Okay, now that Saad has explained his project to us and our dear Amna has announced an incredible scholarship, does anyone want to share anything else? Some good news, perhaps?" I took a deep breath. This was the moment. I stepped forward. My heart was beating fast, but not from fear, from impatience. Yes. Me. I still have something to say. The room fell silent all at once. All eyes turned towards me. Even my parents finally stopped what they were doing. I took out a second file, a thicker, heavier one, the one that represented 6 months of hard work, sleepless nights, online interviews, letters of recommendation, and competitions. I heard my mother whisper to my father, "Is she going to make another announcement?" As if it were a bad thing. And then I went for it. I told you earlier that I had received a full scholarship to Harvard, but it wasn't the only university I applied to. I sent out other applications just to see what I was really worth. My cousins leaned towards me, my aunts whispered among themselves, and my brother glared at me. And I was accepted into all of them. A collective gasp swept through the room. Then I opened the file. Stanford, Yale, Columbia, MIT, Princeton, Oxford, Cambridge. I listed them one by one, slowly, letting each name fall like a sledgehammer blow. The reactions came like lightning. "What? That's incredible! All those schools? That's historic! But how did you do it?" While everyone else was exclaiming, my parents remained petrified. My brother, on the other hand, had turned as white as a sheet. I continued, more determined than ever, and I received full funding offers from 4 of them, which means that no matter which one I had chosen, I would have studied for free. A heavy silence fell. Then I added, looking my mother straight in the eyes, I will have no debts. Never. And finally, I turned my gaze towards my brother. Unlike some, the room erupted in murmurs. People covered their mouths, others shook their heads in disbelief. For the first time in my life, I shone brighter than he did, and he knew it. The tension in the room was almost palpable. You could have heard a pin drop. No one was breathing. People were looking at me as if I had just defied the laws of gravity. A girl who had never been valued, who had never been a priority, who had always been relegated to the background, had just surpassed all expectations. And yet, amidst this wave of admiration, my parents remained frozen, as if paralyzed by this reality that was collapsing before them. My father finally broke the silence, his voice trembling with suppressed anger. Why didn't you tell us anything? I looked at him without blinking. Because every time I said something important, you didn't listen. You never believed in me. You always gave everything to Saad, even when I was working twice as hard. So I learned to fend for myself, and I succeeded on my own. My mother nervously clenched her hands. What are you trying to make us look like in front of the family? Do you think this is the right way to treat us? I smiled gently, not out of insolence, out of lucidity. I'm not doing anything to you. I'm just sharing my truth. It's not my fault if it doesn't look like what you wanted. My paternal aunt shook her head, clearly shocked. But how can one person be accepted into so many international universities? It's incredible. I shrugged. A lot of work, a lot of sacrifices, and no one to support me, so I had to support myself. The guests resumed talking amongst themselves, full of admiration, excitement, almost electrified by the energy of the moment. Some were taking photos of my acceptance letters spread out on the table. Others were asking me technical questions about applications, interviews, competitions. Meanwhile, my brother remained speechless, motionless, unable to process this avalanche of revelations. He seemed to be searching for words, but nothing came out. It was the first time in his life that he was no longer the center of attention, and I must admit, it was strangely soothing. But it wasn't over yet. There was one last truth to tell. When the room began to quiet down, I turned towards him. By the way, Saad, how much did you sign for again? 180,000? 190,000? He clenched his jaw. That's none of your business. Oh yes, it concerns me, because for all these years, you've kept telling me I cost too much, that I had to be careful, that my studies weren't a priority. I took a step forward. And yet today, it's you who will spend 15 years paying off debts. And me, I straightened up proud, radiant. I'm going to start my adult life without a single bill, without a single debt. My mother put a hand to her forehead. Ya Allah, how is this possible? Because you bet on the wrong person, I replied calmly. A murmur of surprise rippled through the room. But I didn't say that out of malice. I said it for a much deeper reason. I turned to the guests, then to my extended family, and finally to my parents. I don't want to be invisible in this house anymore. I don't want people to decide I deserve less. I've spent my whole life trying not to be a bother, doing everything expected of me, enduring everything in silence. But tonight, I refuse to be the girl whose achievements are minimized. I took a deep breath. I'm proud of myself, and you should be too. A silence. Then applause. Real applause. Warm applause. Sincere applause. My cousins, my aunts, neighbors who came for the party, everyone was applauding, except my parents and my mother. But deep down, I expected it. An aunt even wiped away a tear.
"You are an example to all the girls in the family," another added. "You've proven that it's not the person who gets preferential treatment who succeeds, but the one who works." These words touched me deeply, more than I could have imagined, but I hadn't yet revealed the last piece of the puzzle. I picked up the microphone from the table and softly asked, "Can everyone sit down? I have one last announcement, the most important one." People sat back down, intrigued, excited. My father whispered, "A den?" But this time, I didn't hesitate for a single second. I took out a white envelope, more elegant, more official than all the others. The gold emblem shone in the lights. When I placed it on the table, I heard someone whisper, "It looks like an international letter." I nodded. Then I revealed, "This is my letter awarding me a special fellowship from the World Program for Women in Science and International Politics, an exceptional fellowship which covers not only my studies, but also my accommodation, travel, personal expenses, and even an annual stipend." People's eyes widened. "A stipend? You mean they pay you to study? That's historic." I smiled. "Yes, I will be paid during my studies. This program only selects 12 women per year worldwide, and I'm one of them." Cries of admiration erupted, and that's where I delivered the final blow, not to humiliate, but to deliver a truth I had carried for too long. I turned to my parents. "You spent $200,000 so that Saad would have a chance to be somebody." Then I pointed out my file. The world, for its part, invested in me. A heavy silence. A silence that said it all. A silence where for the first time my parents understood what they had never wanted to see. I closed my files calmly. And now, I'm going to live my life for myself. Not to be validated, not to be tolerated, to shine, like I should have done a long time ago. The applause resumed even louder. I felt light. I felt free. I finally felt me. The evening went on for a while longer, but nothing was the same anymore. People came to congratulate me, ask me for advice, tell me that my story inspired them. My brother went and locked himself in his room. My parents no longer dared to speak. And me, in the middle of this party, I finally understood something. I had never needed them to shine. I had never needed their validation. Because the truth is, the light, I built it myself. And that evening, in that small house full of secrets, favoritism, and silences, I took my place again.